Edition of the Urban Algorithm for this July 24th, 2021. I'm your host, Wayne Gilman, on the Our World Media Network. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you each week. And we're going to hit the ground running because we only have 30 minutes in which to get things accomplished here with regard to the state of the world. And there's so many things going on. Many of us are now trying to guard ourselves against a virus that seems to be coming back and may even affect the economy. We have voter suppression in parts of the country where, a lot of Democrats are beginning to feel the squeeze by Republican elements in their state legislatures to suppress the vote, and it's very apparent. The GOP seems to be doubling up their efforts, and we could go on about different racial issues that are happening right now that are topical, and many of you get to see on your cable stations, your local stations, and things of that sort. With us again is broadcasting executive to kick things off and a longtime friend and my political analyst, Reggie Thompson. Reggie, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Wayne?
I guess
Thanks
all
for having
right.
me on today.
And thank you again. And how are things in the rarefied state of Florida?
Well, Florida is Florida. I'm a New Yorker, so I'm a
Mm-hmm.
Florida transplant. And while I like Florida for our lifestyle that it offers, I can't tolerate Florida politics. And we all know that the current governor would not be governor had it not been for the help of the impeached, disgraced uh, previous president,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, I really believe that right now the Republican Party is just inextricably tied to the former president. The fact that he is a Florida resident, I think he has a pulse on what goes on in Florida politics, and is basically telling the Republican governor of Florida what his feelings are on what he should do. Uh, as you may know, the coronavirus is up 275%
Amazing. In
in
the
Florida
state.
right
In the
now.
state, yeah.
Last week, yeah, and they were saying last week that 20% of all U.S. coronavirus cases emanated from Florida.
Mm, mm, mm.
And that was last week. And now some egregious number of people who haven't been vaccinated are in the hospital and dying. And also, they're experiencing a number of breakthrough cases.
But
When I go
those
out, I put a mask on.
All right, so you're
I'm
back
sorry.
to wearing a mask, but the thing is that he hasn't even called for that. But the GOP and a lot of the conservative talking heads on the other side have now, in the last couple of weeks, seemed to be changing their tune about the vaccination. So he is espousing that people go out and get vaccinated because he's seeing the impact that it's having. But the fact the other day he took Anthony Fauci, our distinguished medical expert on this, to task by saying that all of a sudden Fauci wants my 3-year-old son or daughter, whatever he has, wearing a mask. Not even a mask. He said wearing a muzzle at 3 years of age, sort of to poo-poo the idea that young kids should not be, wearing that. And I just, again, it goes back to politicizing this crisis that we have. Angers me.
Well, the thing is when these people, these residents who feel as though DeSantis is looking out for them, God forbid, when if they start losing their kids, oh, that'll be the wake up call. They did an interview on a young lady the other day. She was in her 30s, 8 months pregnant,
Mm.
and had decided that she was not going to get the vaccine. She went and got the vaccine this week. And she said the wake up call was when she lost two friends this week who were in their 30s.
Mm. Mm.
She said that scared the bejesus out of her. And then she said, I ran and got a vaccine because I knew that if I lost those two friends and they were in their 30s, then it was, this is real stuff. It's crazy. And, I don't mean to be mean about this, but if you can't discern that there have been 600,000 people that died from this one illness alone in the past year and a half, and you can't see that the deaths and the illnesses have slowed up from the people who have been vaccinated, and they're telling you that the only people who are getting sick and ending up in the hospital and are now dying because the Delta variant is now the prevalent variant of the COVID-19 in this country,
Mm.
and you can't mitigate that in your mind, then I'm sorry. George Carlin did a comedy routine where he talked about people wearing helmets when they ride their bicycles. He said, "We don't wear no helmets when you ride a bike. If you got hit by a car, you were one of the people that needed to be decimated from the group. Nobody wants to see anybody die,
Right.
but the reality is that there are going to be people who actually have to experience death and be removed from our society because they don't understand what's going on here. And if
I,
you're an individual that listens to somebody like Ron DeSantis, you're an idiot
I agree. I
because this
agree.
dude is going to kill you.
And the thing is that it's the pivotal change in the last 2 weeks that really I find it amazing. That I guess now that he sees the numbers going up, that he feels that he was forced, and there's been a conscious effort on the part of conservative media to do something about this. But too much, too little, too late. Right next to you in Alabama, the governor the other day held a news conference and stressed the importance. She's Republican, the Republican governor. I think her name is Kay Ivey. She was on
Okay,
one of
well,
the
she was one of the ones that didn't agree with the vaccine early on.
right, and now she's saying she's breaking it down. It's basic common sense. But I tell you what irritates me even more, Reggie, is the fact that I've seen some educated people. There's a friend of mine close to me and my family, I'm not going to call any names, was a prominent professor at Columbia University in Manhattan here, and he's refusing. He and his wife have refused. It's like you got one issue on the right side in terms of the political agenda, but then you have the extreme left, the left of the left, that feels even before this pandemic, we're condemning taking any kind of vaccination. And I just find that amazing also that, here you're educated. Here you would have some thought process and understanding the consequences of just being absent, not participating in this process. And even worse yet, spreading it to others unwittingly or knowingly, regardless. But how do you reel those people in?
Very, very difficult. I have a young family member who's in his 30s who I found out had not been vaccinated and had no plans on taking the vaccine. I got a call last Sunday uh, informing me that he caught COVID.
Mm,
Uh, I was kind of angry
yeah.
because not only did he decide that he didn't want to take the vaccine, but when I tried to explain to him that the vaccine had been in place for a number of years. You know, one of the arguments that people give is that the vaccine came to the market too fast. That's not true. The vaccine was already on the shelf. It just had to be tweaked for
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19 because it had been used for SARS when President Obama was in office, and SARS is also a coronavirus.
Right, right. People tend to forget
And
that or they
so they
downplay it.
right, so they used it for that, and then it had to be tweaked so that the vaccine can recognize the proteins that are exhibited by COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Because COVID-19 and SARS are two different types of coronaviruses, but they're both coronaviruses. And one of the reasons why we did not have a pandemic with SARS was because we had an office of the pandemic in the United States.
And who
If you
decimated that
remember,
again?
President Trump
Right.
decimated that
Say his
and
name,
said,
say his name.
we're not getting no stinking pandemic. And then the next thing you know, we got a pandemic. And then he wanted to play it down like it didn't exist. The reality is that a lot of people put the responsibility on hundreds of thousands of the deaths on him. I think we spend way too much time talking about him in particular, even though every week there seems to be more information that comes up about him regarding this guy Barrick, who
Oh,
was raising the funds for
campaign.
the inauguration.
Right.
He raised $100 million, but then he got something like $1.5 billion in contracts and
Mm-hmm.
remuneration during the Trump administration while Trump was in office. The thing is that an individual like that, our disgraced former president, shouldn't be allowed to even. He shouldn't even be in D.C. anymore, much less near the White House.
Well,
But uh, but
I was just gonna say, like, he's become the Teflon Don. As much as I don't even want to make a reference to him, he's gonna bask in the sunlight to a certain extent because of what he's done, the damage to this country, from our perspective. And then also the fact that he has a lot of litigation to face in the coming 2 to 3 years. It's been indirect.
oh,
It has a lot to do with his
less time than
companies,
that. Yeah,
you know. But
but
but you
less
know,
time than that. This is all coming to a head very, very quickly. And even though they're doing this in almost like Lego blocks. So they get
right.
the smaller people first, but it's gonna lead up to his children. They already
Hmm.
got Weisselberg, but you better believe Trump Jr., Ivanka, and Eric are gonna be pulled into this tornado, and then it'll go in from there. I'm just glad he's not in office anymore. And the thing is that I told you before. I think that the conversation about UFOs has come up lately. I believe that we have aliens in our midst. I think that some of the real Republicans were gathered up and corralled and put on spaceships and sent to another planet, and we have some of these guys like the Jim Jordans and the Mitch McConnells.
Oh,
I bet if you tear their faces off, their wires or some other substance that we're not familiar with, those are the aliens.
well, you had me going there for a second, because I still believe in Santa Claus, man. But the bottom line is, it astounds me how some of these people behave. And as you mentioned, Jim Jordan and the Joseph Banks and the McCarthys, The insurrection committee, the investigation. I mean, do you think this will ever come to pass?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All of the stalling is because they don't want, first thing, you got to remember something. Donald Trump still has a very vocal presence
Right.
with the party. He basically hijacked the Republican Party, and now it's the Trump Party. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It is no longer the Republican
Oh
Party.
no, no, without question.
Okay, there are Republicans who remain, but that's not the Republican Party anymore. That's the Trump
Mm-hmm.
Party. Uh, the situation is that when you look at the fact that they've taken a look and very, very studiously determined that as white Americans, they are now largely in the minority. They're not a majority group anymore because you got blacks and Hispanics and Asians and Middle Easterns that live in this country, many of whom think alike across the races and the cultures, different from those people.
Right.
And they're really, really concerned about the fact that they're going to lose their way of life, and they're fighting like mad. But one of the things that happened is a lot of these big companies understood and realized what uh, Black Americans mean to the economic uh, base in this country, and what it means to their companies, which is why some of them signed on to protest
Right.
the voter suppression and voter restriction policies that these states have tried to, or in some cases, voted to put in place. If we understand as Black Americans our value and what we collectively mean
Mm-hmm.
to some of these companies' bottom line, you better believe there's things that will change in this country. The fact of the matter is that we haven't yet mobilized and put our heads together to do that. But once we do, oh, you'd be surprised how things would change because a lot of companies are not trying to go broke,
Well, that's it. They all want to stay
ignoring.
alive. Yeah, I agree. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think the election of Joseph Biden shows the impact of what we could have if we collectively bring together. It shouldn't have to take the losing of a George Floyd and all sorts of similar incidents around the country to bring folk together to realize that there needs to be a change. I firmly believe that unless there isn't a person of color at the top ticket in the previous last two or three elections, there was no reason for us to sit out. I mean, it's just one of those things. I still go back. It's a question of the lesser of the two evils. I'm looking, as much as I admire all the work that Joseph Biden has done in the last 6 to 7 months, I don't understand his position on the filibuster. And
All right,
I'm
so
not
listen to
saying.
this.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no.
Finish your
I mean,
thought because
no. My
I want
thought
to get
is,
to
it's
your point.
just that he comes up with all sorts of rationalization for it. But at the end of the day, and he admits that it's Jim Crow and steroids. So why are you still looking at this archaic? I mean, I can't think of the words to describe. This ancient mechanism
This
that
arcane,
brings us
this
anywhere.
arcane mechanism that
Yeah.
isn't part of the Constitution. Here's the deal, Wayne. Let's backtrack on this for a second. Who
Mm.
is responsible largely for Joe Biden winning this election?
Hey, black folk, black women. My opinion.
No,
James
but more
Clyburn.
specifically,
James Clyburn.
Clyburn. That's correct.
Yeah, right.
Clyburn does not want to be made a fool of. Okay, and he's been behind the scenes trying to get change made so that these voter suppression laws don't stick, and that the federal government's position overrides, because Clyburn was the one who got people, especially African Americans, to support Biden. If this does not go through and voter suppression becomes the order of the day, Clyburn has to wear this around his neck. And he's not trying to do that because he's a very powerful person in Congress, and he does not want to lose that status and look like he has egg on his face. I agree with you. I like what President Biden has done, but I think that anybody that says that they're waiting for, they believe that bipartisanship is going to be the end, they're out of their minds, because
Right.
there's too many people behind the scenes, i.e., the Koch brothers, who don't want to see this go through, and they're spending all kinds of money and threatening the primary men of these people. These people want to hold these jobs. These people aren't trying to have, and these people in Congress and the Senate aren't trying to get a regular job. They're not trying to get a regular job. They're used to being in DC. They're used to going to all the big dinners. They're used to being important.
And some
They don't want
people
to lose
say,
their status.
but some people say that's part of the problem. That the fact that they found this too comfortable, too convenient, and maybe we should shake things up to a certain extent just to get rid of some of this rust that's out there. The process.
But you got to get people to vote. And
That's the
you got to
problem.
remember something, Wayne.
Yeah.
One of the problems, listen to this. One of the reasons why Donald Trump got in office was because there were young people who wanted to see Bernie Sanders in as the nominee. And when he didn't win the nomination, they had decided collectively in their minds that they were not going to support Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
But as a result, when they didn't go out to vote and didn't support Hillary,
This is what happens. Yeah.
And that almost cost us our democracy.
Right. I agree. We're at 23 minutes past the hour. We're going to take a little break up in here, and we'll return with more conversation with our distinguished guest, Reggie Thomas, broadcasting executive, political guru, money man on the street. We'll be back with more right after this. This is the Urban Algorithm on the Our World Media Network.
New York State's largest African American Chamber of Commerce, known as LIAACC, is now accepting new membership candidates. LIAACC has appeared on WABC, Here and Now, NBC's Positively Black, WLIW21, FIOS1, and in Long Island Business News. Membership consists of a variety of men and women of distinction who have been bestowed some of the most prestigious awards in the region. We host monthly membership meetings and signature events, including the Long Island African American Business Expo, Annual Health Fair, Ladies of LIAACC Annual Women's History Month program, and our annual Black History Month art exhibition. Join by simply logging on to our easy new membership sign-up portal at www.liaacc.org.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Type 2 diabetes can have a big impact on your life, but how can it be prevented? Well, the first step is knowing if you have prediabetes, a serious medical condition that puts you at high risk for type 2 diabetes. 1 in 3 American adults has prediabetes, but more than 80% don't know they have it. The good news is, prediabetes can be reversed, and for many people, healthy changes in their daily routine can make a big difference. Take the 1-minute risk test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is gonna be Addie's room.
I am blind.
You're really gonna like it.
I hope so. Yeah. I know this road is there for me.
first night here, but Amy seems cool.
Ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know God's love is there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
I feel like mental health for me is a thing that doesn't really get talked about. It's harder for us to express our feelings because we're taught young to bottle them up. My name is Tobe Chukwudu Bemwigwe. I'm an Igbo boy from the southwest side of Houston, Texas, and I'm here to talk with Muhammad and Jordan about emotions, feelings, mental health. And you know what I'm saying? We're just gonna let the spirit move.
I'm Jordan, I'm 12 years old.
I'm Muhammad. This is my stepson. I just call him my son.
As a father, it's your responsibility to lead your children into being mentally healthy, emotionally healthy.
Sometimes when I cry, I won't know how I'm feeling or why I'm crying.
I just grew up never feeling like it was okay to cry. And so he really forced me to have to reconnect with the kid that didn't get to cry.
That's beautiful. In the society that we were brought up in, it's very hard on little black boys. So you have to navigate feelings and emotions so the world don't get you. We had to learn why cage birds sing, but we fly, even though they poison the sky. We don't cry, we gon' take our piece of the pie.
27 minutes past the hour, and thank you once again for joining us on the Urban Algorithm. Wayne Gilman with you on the Our World Media Network. Our special guest for this Saturday, July 24th, is none other than Dr. Reggie Thomas, and we were talking about a number of things that are affecting our world today, particularly the virus, and most importantly, just a minute ago, we were discussing the issue with voter suppression and the impact the elections have had, and the need to pass some of these bills before Congress to make sure that we still have a right to vote. I know the Reverend Sharpton has sent out a few robocalls this past week in terms of corralling people to come out. I think it's August 28th, the last weekend in the month, to have the March on Washington. And I'm thinking about going down that particular weekend just to be a part, because I just, everybody's got to see the importance of this. I commend to everyone's attention the importance of coming out there to vote. And Reggie, I know you're far away, but D.C. used to be your backyard. I don't know if you'll be there.
It still is my backyard. We still have residents there. My wife is a Maryland resident. And she still works in the area. Several people went to jail this week.
Yeah.
Some of the people, the Congress people from Texas. I can't recall the lady's name now. She's a senior statesman. But Cornell William Brooks, Congressman Hank Johnson, broadcaster Mark Thompson, they all were taken into custody this week because of their desire to see change as it relates to voters' rights and voter suppression. This is 2021. It is absolutely amazing at 2021 in the United States, we're dealing with this foolishness.
Can you imagine? I mean, I go back to the time, and I hate to date myself, but I started in this business in the early 1970s. And, I saw things that were slowly changing then. And I thought after we had gotten a few bills passed that we have a Martin Luther King Day and all sorts of other legislation that, in the early 70s, the voting rights bill had been only around maybe 15, 20 years at that point, but I never thought that we'd be going through this nonsense again. But it just goes to show no matter how much progress we've made, how much impact we've had, and the importance in a good way social media has played to inform the ranks of everyone out here, the electorate, we still have this underpinning on the part of some to just tear the whole system apart. And I really believe those UFO folk you were referring to a moment ago basically are the folks that are just looking, they're on another planet. They don't see things the way the rest of the world sees it. And as you said, the browner this country becomes is the more it's likely to change, and hopefully for the better. Right now, the door is being left wide open for people from Afghanistan. I wonder what kind of impact that's going to have, in terms of, not just the economy, but just the political atmosphere.
I saw a program this week that really just blew my doors off. And one of the things they talked about is when you talk with various leaders around the world, especially in countries like Russia, and some of the other countries where autocracy is the order of the day, they were betting on the United States becoming an autocracy. They are saying that the oligarchs are going to be the big winners, and the United States, they feel, has to become an autocracy. And they're betting that autocracy will override democracy. It's going to be up to us. I mean, if we don't get out there and vote, we don't mobilize, and we don't make sure that these people get out of office, the DeSantises, the Mitch McConnells, the Brian Kemps, what's the guy's name in Texas?
No, the governor.
The governor
you're right. I can't think of his name right now.
Greg Abbott.
Abbott, yeah.
Greg Abbott. Yep. Those guys have to go. They absolutely have to go.
Ted Cruz.
And if these people that think that, listen, here's the way I look at it. If you are an individual that thinks that Donald Trump and people like him are a suitable leader, you are out of your mind. Unless, of course, you agree with an autocratic nation and you also agree that people should not be given equal opportunity to vote, and you believe that your leader should be a thief.
Without question. I agree. I mean, it bothers me when I see what goes on, and that they're not a great majority, but there are a lot of them out there that feel the way that they espouse the beliefs of one that would probably would like to see an autocracy take place here, and to think that Donald Trump nearly had that opportunity. We impeached him twice, and he's still like the Teflon Don. It just amazes me that he has some political strength behind him. But I agree with you, like what you said earlier, that the time is now winding down with all these criminal investigations, and half the things that he did and the people that he appointed, to his administration, all of them have come under question. And the ones that have stayed on to have a certain amount of integrity knew enough to drop out and at least straighten themselves out, before this transition took place back in January. Which brings us, and we're almost out of time here, but I want to discuss the insurrection and that investigation. What do you think is going to come out of that?
Well, I think that Nancy Pelosi is a boss lady. If, ands, or buts. And see, guys like Kevin McCarthy, absolutely, he may know, but he acts like he's stupid. He doesn't have any idea who he's fooling with. You got to understand something. People like Biden and Nancy Pelosi have been in the Washington landscape for years.
Mm-hmm.
Between Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, they got almost 100 years of Washington
Amazing.
experience just between the two of them.
Right.
And the thing is that, whenever you hear Biden say, "Oh, I think that we should," the other side of it is that Biden is as cunning as a fox.
Oh, he's a skillful
He's saying that
politician.
on the surface, but you better believe he got some other agendas on the underside.
Right. Right.
And Nancy Pelosi is nothing to play with. And every time these guys like McCarthy and Jim Jordan and Donald Trump think that they're going to outslick her, she is nothing to play with. And the fact that she kicked Jim Jordan and Jim Banks off of that insurrection committee, the January 6th committee,
Mm-hmm.
he figures, oh, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull everybody off. But Liz Cheney is still on there.
Right. And it's
Liz
not to say that
Liz Cheney bloodied his nose this week.
I was just going to say, I mean, the deal is that I don't always agree with Cheney, and just the name alone, Cheney, it just brings shivers to my spine. But, I have to agree. I give her a lot of credit for what she's doing. And I think in the long run, she's going to come out smelling like a rose in this particular instance.
Well, you got to know that she's getting some instruction from her dad.
Oh, of course, yeah, and again, and that's another thing too. The Bushes have been unusually quiet. Although I did hear George W. the other day criticize Biden about some of the interpreters who were in Afghanistan, but I guess he didn't read the fine print on what efforts were going to be made to secure their stability and safety as Afghanistan goes through its transition. But there should be more of the Republicans coming forward and the ones that are part of the Lincoln Project and those who support the Lincoln Project. They should be coming forward and reclaiming the party of Lincoln. They should be reclaiming common sense. We don't agree, but we have the right to agree and disagree at the same time and have a certain civility about doing it, And it just baffles me that just hasn't happened yet. But I guess they're waiting to see how far people like McCarthy, who hopes one day to be Speaker of the House, I don't see how that could happen unless in 22. And again, it goes back to the vote. Again, it goes back to our ability to stand pat and basically to see to it that things don't radically change. Let me ask you, just shifting gears. I do very little sports, and I mean, not that I don't, appreciate sports. I didn't like the idea that the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA Finals, but that's a whole nother story because I'm a Brooklyn person. But the sports talk radio, and I know you're in Florida, but I know a lot of this stuff gets around nationally. But the treatment of Naomi Osaka, and the fact that some are criticizing her for having been a participant in the Olympics this week, and all she did was lit a flame for the cauldron, and then people are just saying, well, I thought you were going to stay out of the limelight because you decided not to be a participant in the French Open. Have you been following that nonsense? To me, it's just a subtle racism.
Like the cauldron, actually, I didn't know she was going to like the cauldron, but you got to remember, she's a citizen of Japan. She's a Japanese citizen by birth, and sometimes when you have people that have that type of status, they use their international status. They don't look at themselves as beholden to any one nation. She doesn't look at herself as beholden to just the United States. She looks at herself as being more international in nature, and that and she still considers Japan as part of her culture.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and
So
I
I
just
mean,
think
you know,
it's
I'm sure she was asked by the Japanese
Prime
uh,
Minister.
Olympic Committee
Hmm.
to like the culture, and especially being that you got to remember she won this big award recently because of her stance on mental health.
Right, right.
She won a global award, so they're proud of that.
And I think it's commendable that she was strong enough to come out and actually take that position, but to push back on her, and of course this is the nature of the beast. I mean, we've done talk. I'm certain there are people who are looking at this show this afternoon and probably saying, well, I don't agree with him or whatever, But the bottom line is that I just find it so disingenuous in one sense that you're supporting this because of what her mental status is, and then all of a sudden she makes an appearance. She wasn't playing tennis, and she was representing, as you said, the place of her birth. Why all of a sudden has that got to be something critical when you compare that to her absence in the French Open?
Here's let's back that up a little bit. She wasn't necessarily representing the place of her birth. The Olympics are taking place in the place
In
of
the
her
place of
birth.
her birth, right?
She was lighting the cauldron in light of the international community.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right, but it's happening in her home, and
Right, it's happening in Japan.
Right.
That's
And
correct.
and when I look at her, I see more of an American connection. I don't know.
I
I've
see a
just seen.
sister. I see a sister. That's what I see. I see a
Yeah,
sister with Asian influence.
yeah. Boy, there's so many of us in that category, man. I mean, the deal is, I know you and I periodically talk about Ancestor.com, not to give them a plug, but it's we have so many streams in our roots, but it's the racial factor that I really take issue with. There's so many different things to talk about when it comes to sports. But this lady's trying to make a meaningful transition, and it's not easy being in the fishbowl all the time and being picked upon. So and this is new for her. I mean, compared to what the Williams sisters have gone through. But it's always us, man. It's like I don't get that. I mean, and shifting gears again, the country music singer, had the audacity to use the N-word the other day in a private setting, and he's everything is now mea culpa. I mean, he was on GMA this past week talking to Strayhorn about how he is sorry for what he's done, and the record companies dropped him, the publicity people dropped him, and blah 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 blah. And next thing you know, record sales. Yeah, they should have, exactly. If we back in the day, if we were on somebody else's air and had said something that, and I don't even want to call some places that I used to work for, if I'd even mentioned anything that seemed to be anti-Semitic or anti-black, that would have been it. And that's just how it is.
Right.
And thank God that we're on YouTube, so they can't say anything about it. But I'm respectful of everybody's nationality. But I just find it so, appalling that, it's so easy. And maybe he is genuine in his beliefs now that he's turned a page and really would not want to utter those words again in a fit of anger or however it was meant in whatever context. But I was amazed at his record sales soaring, since this whole thing happened.
Oh, they had already been soaring in, and that happened when he was in a drunken rage outside of a bar. And the record companies looked at that and say, you can't represent us in that manner, and rightfully so. They dropped him from the record companies, as well as the he was supposed to host Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And they dropped
He
him
lost
from
that.
that.
Yeah. Well, but and the thing is that is the way it should be. But at the same time, I it just seems like that word has been given so much artistic license. And again, this is where I have problems with some of our brethren in the rap community that feel that it's okay just to turn around and, use it. And then we get upset when we see somebody outside our culture use it, or God forbid if he had used it while, he was singing one of his songs,
Or you sitting in a gas station and you got a Caucasian dude in his car blasting his music, and you hear the word come up in the song and he's singing it loudly.
Right.
I'm 62 years old. When I see that, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, one of the things. Let me say this to you. I used to live in Russia. One of the
Right.
things that we as African Americans need to do is make sure that we stay in check with how we are perceived. Because whatever we're perceived and however we're perceived here in the United States, the rest of the world perceives us in the same way.
No, I agree. I mean, black folk dictate American culture. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the arts, every venue within the arts, basically tells the story of who we are, even if they try to assimilate what we're doing. So we are in conflict. I mean, it bothers me when I hear the word, but I turn around. I'm from the generation where I used to watch Richard Pryor or listen to his comedy, and every other stick he did, was just one of those things, that you turn around, that you start saying, oh, it's okay if we say it amongst ourselves, but we can't have that dichotomy and expect somebody outside of the area thinking that it's okay to turn around and say that. Same thing with Bill Cosby when he went on his pulpit and used to beat up on folk for, certain things that we were saying amongst ourselves. But then again, look what's happened to him, and I don't know I don't know what to make of it.
Well, it's interesting how the world of comedy is able to get a pass on some of these things. I know that, when I lived in Russia and I traveled around Europe, it was so apparent to me. The United States is one of the only countries that whenever they do a news story that says, that involves people of color or involves Caucasians, they don't ever say a white man had such and such or did such and such, but they'll say a black man or an African American man. They want to make sure they make that distinction. If you go to England, that's not the case.
Right. And in the States, to a certain extent, I mean, the media stepped away from that because I remember back in the day, that was one of the biggest transitions as I was starting out in the business, that you didn't identify, somebody's color with respect to an incident. Now that, everything is televised, and particularly when it comes to social media, you can't get away with reporting a story without showing who the individuals are, or if you're looking for a suspect. But again, and you're saying this occurred in Russia while you were there, that there was an identity.
No, I'm saying it still occurs here, but I'm saying it still occurs here. If I watch Florida news, they will identify somebody by race, especially if they're not white. If they're black, they're gonna say, an African American or a black man, and of course they show the picture along with it. But I'm just saying that because of the images that media and television and movies put out in the United States, that gets worldwide appeal.
Right.
And that's what people think. And the other thing is that because sometimes African Americans receive such bad treatment in the United States, when you go to some of these other countries, Mexico, Russia, some of these other, Germany, they also feel as though they can do that as well because that's what they see here in the U.S.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that.
They see the movies.
Mm-hmm. And they hear the music. You got young kids. I used to scold some of the students who I live right near an Ivy League college or soon to be Ivy League college, and the deal is when I see some of these young folks who are outside our community, and even some of the foreigners who are just repeating that N-word like as if it's like water from a faucet. And I'm just saying, that is derogatory, and some of them even know that. But then again, how do you push back and then turn around and say, well, so-and-so has it in his music, it's part of the lyrics. It's just disconcerting, period. And maybe it's
just so important that we pay attention to that,
Exactly. And I agree. I mean, the deal is that this will continue until we've learned that, curve. And I just think that we have to go back to a certain extent and have certain standards when it comes to putting stuff out. But I don't know. We're in a world today that standards don't seem to matter, when it comes to what it is that we do in media. And media, as you said, basically mirrors and reflects what's going on here, period. Maybe this is the reason why I'm ashamed to see.
Else that... No, go ahead. We got a bit of delay, so go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry.
No. I just finishing my point. I just think that media needs to clean up its act. There's got to be some sort of control.
This is something that people of color, all people in general, but people of color need to keep in mind. They think that slavery no longer exists in the United States. It still does. And the reason is because the Constitution makes it clear that if you are incarcerated, that is where slavery is legal. We as African Americans need to keep that in mind. We need to teach our children that it's not okay to go to jail. It's not okay to do crime to end up in jail. And part of the problem is that there are people who work in the areas of justice, both at the local, state, and the federal level, who are nefarious. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember the story of the judge in Pennsylvania who owned stock in a private prison company and was sending young people to jail because they needed, people to
prison population,
man and be employed in the prison industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy eventually got caught. But the fact of the matter is that Black people need to understand that if you are incarcerated, you are a slave.
And it's bad enough that
paragraph.
I understand what you're saying, and I guess in some instances there's a glorification. When I got out of radio a few years ago, I had an opportunity to teach at a charter school and in the South Bronx, still at that time somewhat depressed area in New York City. And I'll never forget, there's a young kid, I won't call his name, he's probably an adult now, but he would come to me during one of the classes I would teach. He would be on his computer, and he would somehow get access to his father, who was incarcerated and was doing time, actually probably to this day, for murder that he had committed a number of years ago. And he would turn around and say to me, so-and-so, Mr. Wayne, this is my father. And when I grow up, I want to be just like as if he was glorifying the idea that, my old man did this, and this is what he does now. And I just said, where in God's earth did you come to understand that that's something that was praiseworthy, And I tried to, work with him as best as I could. And I'd like to think after all this time, we were talking almost 10 years ago, that maybe things have changed, because I thought he had a bright future. I thought, he was sort of playful. You would try to scheme. The young folks are always testing older people. And I remember when I was that age, I would test people who were older than me. Can you play ball? Can you do this? Can you do that? But it got to a point where we got to understand each other, but I tried to impress upon him. Wasn't trying to disrespect his dad, but that was not something that you should look forward to getting into in terms of having it as part of your family tradition. We got enough problems. You talk about slavery in the prison. What about if you want a mortgage? What if you want a PPP? What about redlining? What about all these other issues that to me is slavery too. Voting too. That's all part of it, So, something's got to give.
Texas, they want to lock him up for 20 years because he thought that his time under the prison system was done, and he went out and voted, and now they want to lock him up for 20 years.
Right. That was in Florida, right? I think. What?
No, Texas.
Oh, Texas. Yeah.
Houston.
Okay. Right. That's right. Because that came out right after the. As a matter of fact, that's preceded the Democrats leaving Texas to go to Washington to see about changing the whole landscape with the vote. Yeah, I've forgotten about that, and I don't know what's happened to that guy, but it's unfortunate. Here it is. He was trying to exercise his right, and I think, he had done his time. So, what's up? And there's got to be uniformity in the law.
He was still under their jurisdiction, and he didn't know that. He thought he was done. And now they want to lock him up for 20 years
to make an example. But it's just so unfortunate what's going on with us, and I'm at a point now. I'm afraid to even mention my age, but I really thought a lot of this stuff was going to be behind us, and it just seems to find a way of recycling itself. And we have challenges. I'm proud of the younger folks. When we were out there demonstrating and picketing and different things. And I know you go back to the time when we were working at WLIB where, the people on Madison Avenue didn't think that black folks took a shower or bought even Ivory soap, because that was the issue then, and it wasn't too long after that things, blew up. I mean, we are in a position of greatness, but it's just that we have so much to do within our own community, It's just sad that whenever we get setback, but we can't afford to give up hope. I say regularly that we have to keep hope alive, and it's true. So,
right.
Mr. Thomas, unfortunately, somehow we're out of time. I was only going to do 30 minutes, and it's turned out to be an hour. And I'm grateful, for your time. I know you're busy, and I hope your bride is still well, and all that, and your family, and
never busy for you, my brother.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and this is going to be a regular thing with us. I don't know if it's going to be every week, but I really, really know that you keep your hand on the pulse of what's going on out there politically, and I welcome your appearances here. And with that concludes this edition of the Urban Algorithm. I've been your host these last few weeks and continue to work for the Our World Media Network, a great institution. And, I when I say that, I want to see applause and praise for what they're doing here, because I think it's so important. But again, Reggie Thomas, thank you for being our special guest. Thank you. And we'll be back again on this network 1 week from today.